Hello and welcome to another Illustrator challenge. My name is Julia Vaca and I'm your host. Welcome everybody. I hope you are enjoying these challenges so far, and I hope this is not the first one that you have seen. If so, then check out all the other challenges. There's so many things to learn in Adobe Illustrator. And so if you are new here and you don't know anything about the Illustrator challenges, so we are trying to learn Illustrator and designing step by step. And today's challenge is going to be all about creating a custom pattern using the Pathfinder tool. And today I'm going to show you how to use the Pathfinder tool and how to also create patterns and multiple ways to create patterns. And why do we actually need patterns? If we look at some brands and you want to become a branding designer or maybe even a packaging designer, patterns are appearing in so many ways within the design industry. And just having multiple ways to create patterns will give you that creativity and ability to experiment with patterns. Cool. Welcome everybody. Welcome. First off, I would like you to check out the description below this video and open the starter file. And this is what that will look like. This is our starter file that we're going to be working in, and we are in Adobe Illustrator. If you don't have Illustrator installed yet, go to Creative Cloud. Just look up Creative Cloud on Google and get a testing version, or maybe you want to buy it. So open and download the Creative Cloud app, and from there you can download and install Illustrator. Okay, and once you have the app open the starter file, so click on the link and this is what you will get. I've prepared this file for you to give a little intro to this challenge, and at the bottom you will also find some useful shortcuts like outlining something, or the selection tool with the shortcut V on our keyboard, or the direct selection tool with the shortcut A on your keyboard. Okay, so my friends, as I was saying, there are multiple ways to create patterns within Adobe Illustrator. One of the ways is, for example, let me create a pattern module, and that will maybe be a rectangle, and I'm using the rectangle tool right now. Now I'm going to color this rectangle blue, and maybe I'm going to remove one of these corners using the direct selection tool, clicking on the corner and clicking delete. Now let's say we want to create a pattern out of this triangle. All right, we can go and select this triangle, go to Object, Pattern, Make. Okay, and it's very easy to make a very symmetric pattern within Illustrator, but today we're going to be working with irregular and not repetitive patterns. Okay, in this case we have this triangle repeat, and we can click OK. So now we can modify this pattern by sizing down the triangle. We can also move it around if we want to, and like that we can create an amazing geometric pattern. We can also do that with groups of objects. We can also add new objects into this and maybe make them a different color. So that's one way to create a pattern within Illustrator. All you have to do after this is click Done. And once you click Done, your pattern will be saved to the swatches panel. And if you don't see the swatches panel, you can go into Window and activate swatches right here. So once you have clicked that and you have this check mark checked, that means that your swatches panel should be somewhere in your window. And this pattern is saved here now. So you can see this is our little pattern that we just created, and you can then apply this pattern to any kind of shape, even to a star. So let me create a star, and you can see that I can apply this pattern even to a star. So that's one way to create patterns. Another way that I love is to create patterns that are very difficult to recreate, in fact, because this triangle pattern that we saw just now, it's a very simple geometric object, right? A triangle that's just repeating itself. Okay, and then we have a circle that we've added to that. So that's one way to create a geometric pattern. What I like to do is to create something that nobody else can repeat, and that will make your pattern very unique. Okay? So what we're going to do is first, and I want to show you this technique of how I like to create patterns for my brands. I'm using a rectangle tool, and I'm going to click and drag a rectangle. Now you can see it's filled with my pattern, but I can click on any other color here in my swatches panel just to color it one colored. And now what we're going to do is we're going to use the pencil tool. And with the pencil tool, we're going to create a very random squiggly line that kind of goes across this rectangle and kind of cuts it. Imagine kind of like a cutting knife, cutting this this shape into multiple other shapes. And for that, you must go into the edge at some point, right? So make sure that your line kind of goes to the edge and goes through the whole rectangle, okay? So something like this. Now, this is very interesting because right now our line is filled and we want to turn it around to a fill and stroke, okay? So now we can see this line and what it looks like. What we're going to do now is go back to the selection tool and we're going to select both our rectangle that was in the middle. Let's see, yeah, it's right here. So let's select our rectangle and our lines, and we're going to properties, and we're going to, or actually window, and we want to go to Pathfinder. So the tool that we're going to be working in today. And we are going to do a divide function. So I'm going to click divide. And now if I go into this, you can see that any of these parts that I can select are actually separated into single parts. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click back into my out of the selection, and I'm done with the Pathfinder for now. So I'm going to close the window. And here, what I can do now is I can select all of these objects and I can go in and make them all blue, for example. Okay, now we also notice that this big blob of objects is moving all together. That means that all of these objects are grouped right now. And what we want to do next is we want to ungroup those objects, all right? And that we do with Command Shift and G. Now we can see we can move around all of these objects by themselves, okay? And that will make it really fun because we have all of these really interesting shapes now that are not repetitive and they're not like any other shape, okay? So let's put these shapes to the side, and what we're going to do is we're going to remove some of these shapes that have this very rectangular, this very kind of horizontal or vertical line. So I'm selecting one and I'm going to hold Shift and select the other ones that I see that have that line in them. And I'm going to click delete on my keyboard. So now we have all of these very kind of random pattern elements that are just random shapes. And what I like to do is now I like to bring in some of these shapes into my artboard. So maybe somewhat like this. And you can also pick some specific type of shape. So here we have this rounded edge, right? And we can also decide to not use any rounded edges. So maybe have something that almost looks like a, like a broken porcelain plate, right? So that we don't have those, so that we only have sharp edges basically and not rounded edges. So pick up some of these objects that you see fit to this specific pattern and put them together. You can also resize them by clicking one of the corners, holding Shift, and resizing them proportionally. So that's really fun, and I really like this technique because that will give you this very kind of random pattern feel. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill this space with these pieces of my pattern now, and I also want to bring some into the edge because we want to make it feel like it's really filled. Because if we put all of these objects within the object, it doesn't look like the pattern goes on out of this square. It looks like the pattern is only within the square. So we want to make it look like it's kind of going out of this limited space and creating this very natural feel for a pattern. Also, another thing to kind of think about is the spacing between the objects. So to optimally kind of distribute the objects, you want to make sure that the distance between the objects is somewhat similar. You can see that I'm trying to avoid spaces where there is too much white space between the objects. So maybe I want to pull in this object a little bit closer, and maybe I want to turn this object around a little bit. So somewhat like this. Now what we can do is we can also create a different color palette for this, and that can also be very interesting. I have my own color palette, and I also have an inspiration color palette. Let's see if I find it. Inspiration, yeah. So you can see that I have a lot of different colors here that I have saved at some point, and you can get those on color.adobe.com. They have a lot of amazing color palettes. Let's maybe quickly check it out. All right, how is everybody doing? We have Vin and Rob and Wade joining us, and Sajid is here, Rose. Awesome, welcome everybody. So we're going to color.adobe.com. Let me quickly open that up on my end. And you can do the same so that you can work along with me and check out these amazing color palettes that you can basically access from there. I'm going to log in real quick. All right, and I am in almost. All right, let's see. Well, anyway, this is what the site looks like. And let's take a quick look around, and then you can sign in with your credentials here, and you can save these amazing color palettes. So here I can click explore, and the cool thing that I like about explore is, and to repeat, the site is called color.adobe.com, and here you can, for example, look for something like the word earthy color palette, so natural color tones that come from the earth, right? And once you click earthy, you get, I don't know, dozens of color palettes that fit this exact term, right? Look at this one. This one is really cool, and there are a couple very interesting ones that include some of the green, some of the earthy tones. This one also very interesting, has this really bright contrasty kind of green color. But you can save all of these. You can either download them as a JPEG, or you can save them to your Creative Cloud library so that you can access them just like I did right here. So they will be saved as color theme. You can also extract these color themes by using by using Adobe Capture on your mobile devices. So you can go outside and kind of get inspiration from the nature or from anything that you see outside. Okay, and you can save those also to your Creative Cloud libraries. Now, what I can do is I can simply select one of these objects, excuse me, and I can recolor them in any of these colors that I have here by simply clicking on the color. And that makes my workflow so much easier. So I definitely recommend checking out CC libraries if you haven't used them yet, and save some amazing color palettes to that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to recolor these little pieces here, and I'm going to distribute some of the color tones that are very similar to each other. So you can see I'm using very earthy tones here, and they're all kind of looking like they belong together. All right, I'm going to use one of these bright oranges and maybe another earthy one. And just like that, I'm kind of finding colors that look like they are part of one big theme. Okay, so somewhat like this. Now, what we're going to be doing next is we have a lot of white space between these little pieces. Now, I'm going to bring in some more of the pieces, and I'm going to make them way smaller. So I'm clicking and dragging one in here, and I'm going to make this one, holding shift, I'm going to make it way smaller, so that when the eye kind of catches these big objects, there's still something interesting to look deeper into, right? So that's how we create a certain hierarchy. So with the big objects, we're catching the eye, and with the smaller objects, we're keeping the eye on the artwork, right? That's kind of the theory that I have developed over the years, that I like to work with. Okay, and now I'm gonna make sure to really recolor all of these into different colors, and also make sure that the colors don't repeat too much. So I'm going to try and use different color tones, and you can also use the eyedropper tool using the letter I on your keyboard and sample of some of these other color tones that you already have. Okay, and now we can see that all of these objects that I have some of them had an outline color. So I'm going to click here on none. So I'm gonna make sure that none of these objects is outlined because I don't want to keep that outline. All right, so now a couple more of these small objects to kind of keep the eye on the artwork. And you can see it makes it way more interesting, kind of including these little things here, right? Okay, and whenever you recolor your art, make sure that you only recolor the fill, not the outline. So whenever you want to recolor the fill, click on the fill and not on the stroke. Okay, so I'm going back to my libraries and I'm going to use some darker shades for these guys right here. And again, I'm going to distribute the colors a little bit, and I'm going to put in some more objects and again resize them like that. And again, I'm going to pick another color tone, and you can see I'm doing it very randomly. So I'm going literally through all of these color themes, but you can also create yourself a very tight color palette, right? You can simply go in and create yourself a couple rectangles by using the rectangle tool and clicking option, clicking and dragging to create copies. Now you can see I have a couple copies and I can recolor them in some of these colors, so I can simply kind of make sure that I'm reusing the same colors, right? And that I can do using the eyedropper tool, so letter I on my keyboard, right? And I'm going to sample some of these colors just like that. And that way I have this more consistent color palette. Okay, so that, and make sure to, if you want to really keep this color palette very tight, make sure to reuse these colors everywhere. Mine is a little bit more random, but I'm totally fine with that for now. Okay, I'm going to take some more of these little pieces right here, and I'm going to make them very similar sized as the other kind of small pieces. And again, I can use the letter I on my keyboard and sample some of that color. And by the way, whenever I'm working on my keyboard, I'm always using the V and the letter V and the letter A, and also I'm using Option, Command, and Shift all the time. So those are the letters or the shortcuts that I'm always kind of keeping my left hand on, because I'm a right-handed designer. But if you're left-handed, I think you can work on the other side as well. We also have the Option, Shift, and Command on the other side of the keyboard most of the times. I hope you do. All right, so now another little piece right here, and I'm trying to fill up all of these white spaces, and white space is the space where there is not much happening, right? So I want to make things happen in spaces where it doesn't. Okay, so, and let's bring in another object right here, just like so. Again, there is a little white space around here, so I want to make sure that that is filled too, and there's something happening. And by the way, this process can take quite long if you want to be very precise and if you want to create a very balanced pattern. All right, now let me copy one of these pieces and put it right here, recolor it with the letter I on my keyboard using the eyedropper to another color. All right, this pattern already looks pretty good. Now let's create a background color for this, and for that I'm going to be using the rectangle tool, and I'm going to simply create a rectangle. In this case it's a square that's filling up the whole space in the background. Okay, now you can see that since I've created this rectangle after I've created all the other objects, it is located in the front. So I'm going back into my selection tool, or click the letter V on my keyboard, right click and arrange center back, or you can simply click this combination of keys. So that will be Command, Shift, and square bracket open. And in the same way, square bracket close will bring it to the front. Okay, so that, and now you can see my objects are all in the front. And I can also recolor this this square, again using the letter I, maybe using this black color tone. And now we have this really interesting pattern right here. And now I have found another little piece that still had an outline. So I'm going to click on stroke, and I'm going to click on none. Okay, so let's zoom out. And what I like to do is when I create a pattern is zoom out and look how balanced it is. Now let's remove all of these pieces here because we don't need them anymore. And I'm simply using the selection tool, clicking and dragging a selection box around all of these pieces and clicking delete. Okay. So I think our pattern looks pretty good. I am very satisfied with it. Now the only thing that kind of disturbs me is that I can't really imagine how it looks like on a rectangle or a square surface, because all of these pieces are reaching out to the sides, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a clipping mask that basically will bring all of those pieces that reach out of the frame into the artwork, and we are going to basically frame them, create a boundary box of visibility. Okay, so we're going to use again the rectangle tool, and we're going to place that on top. The color doesn't matter in this case because you're not going to be able to see it. And now, having this square selected, we're going to click shift. First, let's go back to the selection tool and click shift and hold it, and select all of these objects that are looking out of this window. Now we have this rectangles or the square selected and all of these pieces. Now we're going to properties and we're going to make clipping mask, or we can right click and click make clipping mask. Okay, now you can see we have created a frame for all of these little pieces that were reaching out of the artwork, and we have this really cool frame here. Isn't that awesome? All right, so this is how that works, and you can see here in this case I have basically just created a black line with my pencil tool, kind of doing the same thing. I just didn't use the pathfinder tool here, but there are so many ways to create a really cool pattern even just with lines. Okay, so now we're going to take this logo that we have in this artwork, and we're going to imagine that this is some brand pattern. Okay, and so for that, you can see this artwork right now is locked because I didn't want you to get confused and move it around by accident. So you can click Command Option and 2, and now you can access all of these elements. Yes, even the Illustrator logo. So now you can take this logo right here that says Pure Box, and we're going to make it larger. Hold Shift, click one of the corners, hold and drag, and we're going to make this color white. So I'm having the Pure Box logo selected, clicking I on my keyboard and selecting the white color over here. And now I'm going to move this right there, and look how cool you can play around with some of these elements by arranging them maybe on top of the logo, right? Right now, this element seems pretty intense. It's kind of covering a lot of the logo. That's not what we want. So let's bring the logo to the front, right? Click, arrange, bring to front. And let's bring this little piece to the front because I thought that was kind of really interesting to have this interaction of the logo and the background pattern, right? So we're clicking on this little element, arrange, bring to front. And look how cool. Now it looks like the Pure Box logo is kind of interacting with the pattern, and there's some really cool stuff going, and there is this connection. And we can also play around with it a little bit more by using some of these other elements, and right click, arrange, bring to front, and create this really cool kind of connection, but not necessary. Just make sure that it's not too much. Okay. Now we have this really cool pattern going, and we have these really natural colors. We have the logo in it. By the way, you can create your own logo if you like. Cool. Hi, Ruben. Good to see you. All right. Annika is here. This looks pretty cool. Thank you. Yeah, I'm actually surprised that it came out. Sometimes, you know, live streaming is a little nerve-wracking. But in this case, this worked out pretty well for us. Okay, cool. So, and now we have still this color palette. We can experiment with colors. We can even make this logo this different other color if we want to. But now there is not a lot of contrast. So I would say let's keep it contrasty, maybe even a nice neon color tone, or this white color I feel like worked really, really well for this. Okay. So now let's export real quick so that you can share this maybe on your social media or maybe on Behance and put it into your project as an image. And one thing to keep in mind is that this is an artboard that I have created for you. And once you click on the artboard tool, you can see there is one artboard. So this artwork is not part of the artboard, and that's made like this on purpose. Okay, so that whenever you export, and you export by going to File, Export, Export As, you can export only this frame of artwork that we've been designing in, and that's kind of the cool part. And what we have to click for that is Use Artboards here. And we can either go into selecting PNG or JPEG, whatever you prefer. PNG is good if you want to use a transparent background. So for example, if you didn't have this black background, you would be able to put this logo, including the pattern, on any other color after exporting it. So for example, if you have a website and you want the logo to kind of match the background color, that's definitely possible. All right, and for that you would have to export as PNG, use Artboards, and then export, and then you would have to select the transparent background. But that only works if you don't have a color here already, and we do. So we're going to go back and cancel. We're going to go and export it as a JPEG. Of course, we can also export as PNG, but in this case, we just have this filled image, and we're going to click export. Now we have options here, and the resolution, whenever you want to view this artwork on the screen, you can select 72 points per inch. Now, if you want to kind of go out of the original size and zoom in a little bit more, that's when I like to use the 150 pixels per inch. Okay, and I'm going to click OK, and now my artwork is already exported to my computer, and I can show you that real quick. So let's see our JPEG here, and this is what that looks like. Now, because I've exported it in 150 pixels per inch, it looks way larger. If I had exported at 72, it will be the original size that we saw on our, oh no, actually this is set at 50%. Never mind. So this now you can send to your phone and then export whatever you prefer. All right, my friends, I'm hoping this was a fun challenge, and I'm excited to see you for the next Illustrator challenge. Bye bye.